All right, good morning, everybody. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. We have about 11 people on the call. Thank you for joining us today, and happy International Women's Day. My name is Amy Gilroy. I'm the Farm to School Manager at the Oregon Department of Agriculture, and I'll be facilitating the webinar today. Before we get started, I wanted to go over a couple of logistics for the call. First off, the webinar will be recorded. We will send out a link to the recording later today so it can be shared with those who weren't able to join us. And I think what we'll do today is we're going to keep all of your lines muted to reduce the background noise. So if at any point you have questions, you can either type them in the question box or the chat box in the webinar toolbox. And then at the end of each section, we'll also unmute the lines and people can ask verbal questions. At the end of Shannon Brubaker's overview of the Specialty Crop Block Grant, at that point we will open the lines and take questions and answer questions. Okay, so with that, let's get started. So we at the Oregon Department of Agriculture decided to host this call to help partners working in farm to institution and regional food systems understand how their project ideas may fit within the Specialty Crop Block Grant opportunity and how to apply. So Shannon's going to sort of walk us through or give us an overview of the grant program, which for some of you will be new information, and for others who have either received Specialty Crop Block Grant funds in the past or applied in the past, it will be a refresher of the application process. We thought this was a timely webinar because of the uncertainty of the Farm to School Education grant funding, and we wanted to help you leverage and coordinate some of your project ideas. So after Shannon's overview, I'll share a couple of examples of past successful Specialty Crop Block Grant projects that have had an emphasis on farm to school or farm to institution or regional food system efforts. And then we'll open the lines for a discussion and sharing out of project ideas and explore some of the collaborative approaches from around the state that you guys all are working on. All right, so I'll go ahead and turn it over to Shannon. And like I said, if you guys have questions along the way, please type them in your chat box, or you can ask them. We'll open up the lines after Shannon's overview.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Amy. Happy to be with you today and be able to present a little bit about the Specialty Crop Block Grant Program. We do have some changes that we put in place this year, and so I'm glad to be able to share those with you. Amy's given me like 10 minutes to run through this, so I'm going to speak really fast. She's shaking her head saying no. So it'll be a whirlwind, but we'll get through this, and hopefully if you have any questions, either you can ask those towards the end or as we go throughout this presentation, or you can send me an email direct. So just to get started, we are talking about the 2007 Specialty Crop Block Grant Program. Let's see, how do I move through this? There we go. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Shannon Brubaker, and I have been the manager for the Specialty Crop Block Grant Program for 3 years now. I've been with the Department of Agriculture for 15 years. And there's my face, so that if you see me around, you might be able to say hi at any of the events and conferences that you might be at. I've given my contact information here, so I'll pause just a moment in case you need my phone number or my email address. Pretty easily found on our website at www.oregon.gov/ODA. And from that site, you can click on Specialty Crop Block Grant Program under the Marketing and Development program area. I will go to that at the tail end of our presentation here. And today we're just going to overview a little bit of the requirements of the program, what our timeline looks like, and then hidden underneath that picture, we're also going to go over the application form and what that looks like, and then hopefully have some opportunity for some questions and an answer. For this specific program, we are talking about specialty crops. Those are fruits and vegetables, nursery crops, Christmas trees, turf-type grasses, tree nuts, wine grapes, anything that is for human consumption that is for, let's see, we're increasing the consumption of them, competitiveness of them, and opportunities to enhance that across our state at a domestic or regional or international. I'm going to go over a little bit of our priorities as we go through this. Our program has been around since 2008. It is a Farm Bill funded program. And so all the states have that. That's why we are called a block grant program. And as of now, we will hopefully exist until 2018 when the Farm Bill is reestablished. You can learn more about the program at the USDA grants website at ams.usda.gov. You can get that website here on this location. Additionally, on this website, you can also get the full list of what specialty crops are eligible and the ineligible specialty crops as well. So you'll look for like main commodities that are like wheat and barley, things like that, that are non-eligible commodities, but also you can get a full list of the eligible commodities as well. So I wanted to kind of highlight the main changes that have been made both last year and this year for those of you who may not be aware of what those are. So this year we introduced the single phase process. In the past we've had a concept proposal and a full proposal. This year we are a single phase, and so you'll have just one application process that you'll go through. It's due in April. Last year you'll see here with the 3 bullets in blue what we changed. We now have a threshold of 175,000 and a baseline of 25,000. We introduced last year as well a 2.5-year project time period. And then we also had a major change at the national scale in our performance measures. So you'll want to look for that when we go through the application process. For eligibility, again, we talked a little bit about what specialty crops are defined as, and those are fruits, vegetables, tree nuts, dried fruits, horticulture crops, nursery crops, and those include our floriculture. Funding must solely enhance competitiveness of Oregon's specialty crops. That's on domestic, regional, national, and international scale. Grant funds will not be awarded for projects that solely provided profit for single organizations, institutions, or individuals. That does not mean an individual or single organization cannot be the applicant. It just means that it cannot be for that benefit of that single organization. And then eligible entities include nonprofits, for-profits, government entities, tribal entities, and colleges and universities. So pretty much anyone can apply for it as long as the benefit is for the overall specialty crops of Oregon. The policies and requirements can be found under 2 CFR 200, also known as the Super Circular, Subpart E. I also, within our program guidelines, have pasted in the main ones that are specific to Oregon specialty crops, and our program guidelines are available on our website. Some of the restrictions, just to kind of highlight those, is some of the, I guess I should say, limitations, more so than the restrictions, are that we cannot do generic promotions. They have to be very specific. So you see here we talk about increasing the sales of XYZ grown watermelon is an acceptable project versus XYZ grown as a generic campaign. So we talk about things that are very specific to fruits and vegetables versus just a broad-based, local grown type of project. And then also the third bullet there highlighting grant funds cannot be used for costs associated with general trade shows, meeting rooms, displays, demonstrations, or exhibits, or the rental space for activities that do not solely promote specialty crops, So we have to be careful to ensure that the space that's being used is specific to the project that's being proposed. Additionally, when we talk about equipment, travel, rental costs, and other types of associated costs towards these projects, it must also be very specific towards the project that's being proposed. Grant funds cannot be used for coupons or incentives, must also be cannot be used towards political or lobbying activities, and there is no indirects allowed towards this program as well. And then just a reminder that the funds that are being used are part of the public domain. And as far as Oregon's program is historically, we've received $1.5 to $1.9 million a year since 2008. We just got word yesterday that Oregon received an additional amount of money since last year, which is great news. So we are at just a little more than 1.7 million. And again, our threshold is 25,000 to 175,000 per project. And though matching is not a requirement of this program, it is encouraged just to show that there's sustainability within this program beyond soft funding. These are 2.5-year projects, which means that they fund based on the federal fiscal year, so beginning around October, and will end April 2.5 years later. We do require twice yearly reporting, and we have a 14-member industry representative advisory committee that helps make these decisions and recommend them towards our director. We established funding priorities in 2012, and they are updated based on what the USDA's recommendation is. Every fall, we look at those, and these are currently what we have for our Oregon priorities. These are just the titles of them. On our website, you can see in detail what they mean. I'll pause for a moment for you to look at them. The very bottom bullet, agriculture and food related priorities identified by Oregon Solutions Network Regional Solution Centers, is a rural development focus. These are projects that help ensure that there's a focus on increased economic-based careers, jobs, infrastructure as it associates with agriculture. In order to qualify for that, there's not I would say, score that increases you. It also has to focus on one of the top bullets as well. There's some details about that on our score sheets and as well on our website. So just to give you an idea of what the timeline looks like, and these are just some highlights of our timeline. April 4th is the deadline for your proposal. June 7th has been moved up. Actually, it used to be July, roughly July 6th, 7th. USDA moved our deadline up a month, so we are looking at our state plan to be due on June 7th. So that's the main application for Oregon Department of Agriculture. And then funding should be available by mid-October, so project start dates. And then what I would like to do is just kind of give you guys some navigation and idea of where you can find materials. And then I'll turn it back over to Amy. So on our website, you can see the link here. I'm going to just click on that. And hopefully, Erin, if you could let me know if you can't see this, that'd be great. So on our homepage, under Marketing and Promotion, you'll click on Specialty Crop Block Grant Program. Perfect. Erin says you can see it, which means most of you can. And all of our resources for this program can be found at the bottom of our homepage. So this is where you'll find 2017 guidelines here. You'll click on that, it'll download. So that's a PDF file. You can also find project summaries for 2014, 2015, and 2016. So you can kind of get an idea of some of the different types of projects that have been funded through our program. And then additionally, most importantly, you'll find our proposal form here. And then also a link to the website for USDA, where I mentioned you can find which specialty crops are eligible. Also, on the left-hand column, you can find our program priorities here. And I mentioned that this is where you can get the detailed information about international, So there's these 3 bullets here, and then local and farm direct. And you can get the information about that, certification programs that are eligible, food safety, and so forth. One of the most important areas that you will find in this is how to submit your proposal. And so that will take you in here to the actual form to fill out to upload your proposal when it's time. This is a navigational area that you can select your files off your desktop. And additionally, there's application process as well. It will help you to know all the specific details that are necessary to submit your form as well. What I'd like to do now is just take you in real quickly into the guidelines document and the proposal form to share with you what the information is in there. I think I have those open in here. So first, I'm just going to give you a quick glance at our guidelines. So within the program guidelines, this will help you to understand specifically the 2017 guidelines area. It'll help you. Some information didn't get updated. There's no concept proposal, folks. All right, so this will introduce you to the program, give you eligibility information, specifics on what we mean by benefiting one product or organization, examples of acceptable and unacceptable projects, the funding, matching, indirects, what does indirect mean, types of organization, priorities again. So this is as a PDF on our website. You can download it. It'll give you the timeline, very specific timeline. I gave you like 3 deadlines, but this will help you to understand when the advisory committee receives them, what does it all mean, what's the requirements for our actual application form, submission details, what's the review criteria. So it goes through all of this. And at the tail end of it, I'm making you all sick by scrolling so fast, sorry. So additionally, we talked a little bit about performance. It actually gives you the performance reporting requirements, but it also talks about the new outcome measures. So what I'd like to do is just kind of pause for a moment. It used to be, those of you who have applied before used to give us a goal, a target, a benchmark, and then some data collection information. Now you actually have requirements to use these outcome measures, 8 of them. From that too, then you select an outcome indicator. So you'll use the ones that are provided for you here. If you have questions, once you have a chance to review them, please call and we can go over this. Amy is familiar with them, I'm familiar with them, so you have resources here to help you. On the very end of this guidelines document, you have an appendix that will help you with allowable and unallowable costs, and then a proposal score sheet. And they're actually within the PDF, and I'm sorry that I don't have that attached here, but I can show you that on the other website, but let me show you here. So here's your allowable and unallowable area. So this will give you all of the specifics for our specialty crop block grant program. So be sure to utilize this section when you're filling out your budget. And then additionally, at the tail end of it, we've given you the score sheet, so how your project will be evaluated by our advisory committee. This is crazy, right? Right here it is. So how your actual sections will be weighted. Proposal area, collaboration, cooperation, feasibility and measurement, budget, matching funds, and overall quality of proposal. So that should be useful for you as you put together your project. Okay, so I'm going to now open up the actual application form. We have actually separated the application form into 2 sections. We have a front section, which is all the instructions on how to fill out your application. We've given you examples of what we expect to see in that section, and then how to fill it out. And these are your actual actual bullets for the questions that need to be answered within that section. So you'll see here, project purpose and industry impact. These 4 bullets are the narrative section you need to have answered in that section. And then project beneficiaries, this is what you need to enter within that blank. And then same is true, does this project directly benefit socially disadvantaged farmers? Check that box. And then continuation of project information. This is the information that needs to be answered within that section. As you go through the section, continue to answer all of these sections. External project, describe the specialty crop stakeholders who support this project and why, and it goes on. And then here's your outcome measures, and we've given you an Appendix A with all of the indicators and instructions on how to do that. That's at the back of the entire packet. Once you get to, same with your budget narrative, we've given some examples of what we expect to see within those sections. And so once you get to page, I think it's 11 or more, 15, you're going to get to a project break or a section break. Here's the instructions. Beyond this, it's the actual form. So you remove all these instructions that are before it and you begin to fill in the form. So all the formatting and stuff beyond this are set up for us to be able to move into a state plan application. So you'll fill in right below this. This is where you start to type. And you're good to go. So I don't necessarily want to go through a full every single section because we don't have a super lot of time. But we now have work plan as an attachment. And we have, I think the other one, the matching funds is the attachment as well. So be sure to read through this upfront section as your instructions on how to fill out the actual form itself. Should be pretty self-explanatory. If it's not, give us an email or a phone call and we'll help you through it. I'm not sure that there's questions at this point. But if there is, as we go through, Amy and I will be right here to answer your questions and we'll go from there. So thank you.
All right, everybody. So are there any questions? There are no questions in the chat box. Are there any? I'm going to go ahead and unmute the lines for a couple minutes. And if anybody has a question, you can go ahead and answer it. You may have to, I think the default is that all of your lines are muted anyway, so you may have to check your microphone or your speaker feature to make sure that you're unmuted on your end. But all the lines are open right now. So I'll just give a minute or two, and we'll a minute or two for questions, and then we'll start talking about some examples of farmed institution and regional food system projects.
Looks like maybe Tony has a question in the chat.
So
okay, we have one question from Tony. She says, is this project something we can use with FFA and our school garden, or does it need to be disadvantaged farmer specific? So I'm going to let Shannon answer that.
it does not have to be disadvantaged farmer specific. Just crazy. Sorry about that. It does not need to be disadvantaged farmer specific. I know, especially crop block grant program, one of the scoring components of the program is disadvantaged or new and beginning farmers, which FFA does have a focus on sort of next generation farming. So that is to the benefit of a program like that. So it would kind of depend on how your project is focused and what you're doing with the FFA programming at your school. But yeah, it is a programs such as FFA and school gardening programs are qualifiers, farm to school, qualifiers. It just depends on how it's focused and what the emphasis is on the programming there.
Other questions?
This is Tracy
Hi, Tracy.
with an echo. Hi. I wonder if this makes sense now or after you go over examples, but I'm wondering if there will be an opportunity for you or Shannon to talk about what makes a proposal competitive, specifically what's different than in the past.
Yeah, so I have a couple of examples that I was going to share with everybody as successful projects that have received specialty crop block grant funding that are either focused on farm to school or farm to institution, and then are also focused on building the capacity of regional food systems. So we can talk about some of the key pieces of those projects as sort of as examples. I think generally that I think the competitiveness of the proposals. I think again, sort of as Shannon talked about, going over some of those performance measures and outcome indicators that are now part of the evaluatory framework of specialty crops. I think under each of those presents its own level of competitiveness. So so the examples that we're going to talk about briefly, those aren't completely inclusive. There's many other outcome areas that I think would also potentially be present a competitive application.
Good morning. This is Elizabeth Schmidt. Are you finished answering that question? I just want to make sure before I change the subject.
Does that help, Tracy?
Sure. Yeah. I was thinking more like, the importance of partners, more specifics about not the rules per se. Thanks.
So I feel like what we could do is maybe go through the samples that we have for some projects, and maybe as we get to the tail end of those, then maybe we can talk a little bit about, I mean, it's difficult to look at any one project and say why it's more competitive than any other type of project, except for, because each package comes in different each year, right? So why one year, one set is more competitive than the next year, that's challenging. And because every year looks different. And I think partnerships are important. Industry involvement is important. And I mean, industry doesn't matter what type of industry, whether you're saying strong, heavy involvement with producers, processors. So it can depend on that particular project, because it can be, if it's farm to institution, as we're looking at this subset group that we're speaking to right now, versus maybe it's a strawberry specific project and they are looking at increasing, value added components of strawberries. So it just kind of depends on how the projects look for that particular year. So I could say one thing and then a whole different type of projects come in for the year. But I do think there is a lot of value in ensuring that how those depending on what your project is, that you have good, solid community support toward it and partnerships with it, because that helps the advisory panel, that 14-member advisory panel, understand that within your region, and I'm speaking specifically with you, Tracy, on that, like your region has that sustainability and value behind it, right? And anybody that's on the call, same thing matters, that it's important to those regions economically, as a benefit, careers as a benefit. And as we look at the overall scope of Oregon, how will it translate over and to other areas of the state? So it can kind of build in that fashion. So it kind of just depends. And I know that's not the greatest to answer, but it's how it works with grant programs, I guess. So
That was good. Thank you.
we have a couple questions on here. So
I think we have a couple of questions that were just submitted on the chat box, but they're pretty specific to sort of project ideas. So I think what we're going to do, why don't we'll wait on those questions. Let's go over a few of these examples, and then we'll sort of open it up for broader questions. We'll answer these, and then really just start sharing sort of what some people's, what your ideas are. Again, sort of trying to understand how your ideas may fit within the framework for specialty crop. And then giving you all the opportunity to potentially build or leverage off each other's projects or collaborative ideas. So that's what we're hoping to accomplish with the rest of the call. So I'm going to go over 3 projects, and each of them I think has sort of a competitive theme in them, or a theme that I think made their project sort of stand out or was especially strong. And so I'm going to talk briefly about those, and then we'll get back to the questions and discussion. Okay, so the first example I wanted to share with all of you that was funded in 2015 is the Adoptive Farmer Program. And that program is managed by formerly the Agribusiness Council of Oregon, which is now known as Oregon AgLink, which is a membership-based producer, membership-based organization here in Oregon that has statewide reach. And the central theme that this project offered was that it was about educating the next generation of farmers and ranchers in Oregon, and had very strong relationships with ranchers and farmers in a particular area in Oregon, as well as schools. And so these are sort of the two kind of some key activities or key accomplishments, I guess, of this project. I think one of the strengths of it was that it was a project that connected middle school science programs that were already aligned with STEM standards, and then integrated a lot of expertise with specialty crop producers by having or hosting on-farm field trips, and then having farmers coming into classrooms periodically throughout the year to talk about how they use science and technology on an everyday basis in their industry and specialty crops. And so that project, I think, is a good example of sort of I guess with a good example of a farm to school project explicitly that was funded, that was using the expertise of farmers in the specialty crop industry to educate the potential next generation of producers. The second example I wanted to give you all is the High Desert Food and Farm Alliance. And this project, I think, sort of speaks to what Tracy was asking about, the competitiveness of partnerships as an example of a way to to build a competitive proposal. The High Desert Food and Farm Alliance is a group of ranchers, farmers, marketing companies, governmental groups in Central Oregon whose main purpose is to improve direct markets for a lot of producers in that area, and working with certain businesses to help make that happen, as well as they have also integrated sort of they are with other funds, again, leveraging some of their other project areas or funding streams for taking a look at procurement policies, especially in schools. They're making some inroads with other institutions as well, but predominantly in schools. There's also sort of a marketing component that they've integrated that is working with the producer community with the goal of improving farm sales. And then they've also had they had an evaluation component of their project that was identifying what was necessary in terms of infrastructure, whether that was supply chain issues, whether that was looking at potentially aggregation centers, but really trying to understand what was necessary to meet some of the demand in that area for more specialty crops. And again, I think this project is a good example of strong partnership in realizing that, to improve their regional food system, they would need partnership across public and private sectors, and built this into their proposal. And then the last example I'll give is the clackamas food system one stop, which is sort of it's a virtual place. It's essentially it's a web-based platform for producers to use or to visit. And the thing that I think is really strong about this proposal is that this was this was built off the part of Clackamas County's 2012 agricultural investment plan, as well as it was one of the governor's Oregon Solutions projects. So it had really broad-reaching municipal, county, and state level support. And it also is, I think what also made it unique is that it essentially was a place, it's a virtual place where producers can come and find out and navigate information about the regulatory environment. So whether it's a land use issue, whether it's a food safety issue, it's basically a one-stop, as they describe it, a one-stop place to really help the producers in Clackamas County, build their capacity and to kind of help them sort of navigate or find the web in which they're working in across a wide variety of resources. So technical support, whether that's specifically about soil science or specialty crop production, the regulatory environment, as I mentioned, and then a lot of other things like marketing help and things like that. Okay, so those are sort of the three examples that I wanted to get in front of you all. We can go back to questions now, and also the lines are still open, so if you do have questions, you can go ahead and ask them now. So Jenny had a question. Can you give an example of a past recipient of the grant in the Farm to School category? And so the Adoptive Farmer program is a good example of that, Jenny. We do have other examples too. I don't know if you want to share any of those right now.
Well, I mean, there's so many of them. Let's see. North Powder is currently receiving a Farm to School project which helps fund. Let's see. They have received back-to-back ones. One to establish programming in the region and help to fund their food corps program, and then also now they're establishing High Tunnel and sort of like economic programming for the students to then sell to at farmers market programs and so forth, and season extension work. That's still kind of in the early stages for the current program. That's the second side of that. Salem Kaiser Education Foundation has received funding for aquaponic work. And I don't know, the list could go on for a while. This last year, I'm not sure we funded really any farm to school efforts except for the Adoptive Farmer program. So it kind of varies on the types of different efforts that we've done. We've done a few different things. So we did food roots work, which also had some components of food corps. Megan, what was it called? Willamette Farm and Food was funded under the program. So it's a few different types of efforts that have gone on down around the state. There's so many different ones.
Yeah, I think, but prior to the farm to school education funding or the having an exclusive competitive state grant program for farm to school education, I think there were oftentimes those projects that had a farm to school focus. The specialty crop block grant program was clearly something that those partners or those projects were drawn to or were motivated to apply for those. So I think historically there have been quite a few examples, as Shannon just mentioned. I would say some of the things that most of those have had in common in the past is mostly about helping motivate the next generation of specialty crop producers in Oregon about careers in the specialty crop industry. I also think there's been a strong school garden component in the past of those specialty crop block grants that have focused on farm to school and using school garden education as a way to enhance exposure to growing specialty crops and exposing children to healthy eating habits, learning about where their food comes from, etc. Now, I think what will be important, and Shannon, all of that remains to be seen in terms of what happens with the farm to school education funding during this session. So it may be, I think one of the things that Shannon has expressed to me in the past is that the Specialty Crop Board has expressed that they would like to see these projects be working more closely with the specialty crop industry and tying in specific benefits to the specialty crop industry in these farm to school and farm to institution related projects. So that's something to keep in mind. Okay, we're going to go back to some of these questions. So we have a question from Toby. Could you talk more about not for coupons or price discounts? What if a school wanted to partner with a small farm to provide a specific said green all year at a set price? The grant funding would help support both the farmer's production of said crop and in educating students from the school in growing that said salad green.
So in the past, we have the Special Crop Block Grant Program has allowed for coupon or voucher incentives. In fact, a lot of federal programs have. The challenge with vouchers and coupons is once that voucher is issued, then there's no guarantee that voucher would ever be used. And then you have a set aside amount of funding that we are unsure of if that funding ever gets spent. So that's why coupons and vouchers have been eliminated from funding. Ways that can be done with something like what you're talking about is like a cost share program, where the farmer shares the cost and the grant program shares the cost of doing something like that. There's ways that we can work on setting up a program such as that, but where we put into place a actual shared coupon block that's like, this is for these coupons, and then once it gets issued and the person walks away with that $5 coupon and then it never actually gets spent, then there's no evidence that we've actually measured that use. So the federal programs have cut that type of usage. Even things like Veggie RX are not actually being implemented in that fashion. So that's why coupons and incentives have not been allowed anymore. So hopefully that answers your question. If you're interested in talking a little bit more about how you can set something up like that, we can talk about that.
Okay, question from Megan. Can you speak about industry engagement? What are some examples of how industry might be engaged in a competitive farm-to-school proposal?
Depends on the proposal, first of all, and what the actual effort is that you're speaking of. Amy gave some great examples of projects, the the adoptive farmer program is definitely one that industry is very engaged in. We've seen some other examples of programming where farmers have paired up with, whether it be the next generation or the farmers are wanting, and it doesn't even necessarily need to be farmers. It can be food processing industry where they are wanting to be involved in provide science and technology efforts. OMSI's got a great program where they're doing that, where, Oregon Freeze Dried is part of that programming as it pertains to their space program. So there's different ways that you can get farmers and food processing industry involved in the efforts that are going on at our schools and in the programming that happens at the schools. I think one of the best benefits that we have here in Oregon is that our industry cares about ensuring that our Oregon agriculture is sustained forever. And so depending on how you shape your project, that's how you can get the industry engaged. And specifically if it's, Oregon Potatoes, Oregon Potatoes is looking for a spokesperson that will go and do debates on potato and grow potatoes at the local horticulture classes and talk about what potato is. And they're interested in having somebody continue to speak for them as a voice in the younger generation. So there's just lots of it out there that they just really need to have. You just got to get engaged and start talking to them about that yourself. Then they become more engaged and want to have partnerships as they go. And so kind of, I know that doesn't help. It kind of depends on how your project is, how they will get engaged as well. So that's what Amy and myself and our other trade development managers are here to do, because we're out there and we talk to them. So then we kind of know how to get them involved in what you're doing as well. So I would say talk about your project to us and we can help talk to them as well. Hopefully that helps.
That's helpful. Thanks.
Looks like Toby that she jumped off the line, but how much funding for the project?
I
don't think it's not on the call anymore.
Okay, so Toby had a question about how much funding for project example. What's that?
Current.
I mean, she means like, what's our average funding for projects? Maybe. It's kind of a weird question. So,
sorry, this is Toby.
Oh, hi, Toby.
Yeah, so that question was about that first project you talked about that brought students out to the farm and then grew a specialty crop. That first example that you gave, I just wonder how much that was funded for, that connected STEM in that middle school.
Mm-hmm.
What was the amount of funding that was rewarded for that particular project?
$72,000.
And that was for a 2.5-year project?
Yep.
And how many students do you know?
I'd have to pull their numbers on it, but they have a pretty broad base, and I think that they hit, I want to say 12, maybe 12 different schools.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
But like you said, it is a membership-based program. This side of it funds only their specialty crop side of it as a complementary component, right? So that's that. As Megan was just questioning, how do you get the industry engaged in it, right? So they have strong partnerships with the industry. I mean, grass seed to pumpkin to all sorts of different types of industry engagement in that model. And, they have NORPAC growers and all sorts of things engaged in that model because it's a very strong program. On a micro level, because that's a statewide, Willamette Valley, a statewide programming, right? But it's focused in this Willamette Valley corridor. Depending on where you're located and what a micro programming like that would be. Because I think, if I remember correct, there's a program on South Fork John Day that's very similar, that's funded through the ODE grant program. where they're bringing in ranchers, because this is specialty crops, so we couldn't do ranching and stuff like that, but they're bringing in ranchers and they're bringing in specialty crop, but they also do natural resource components where they're talking about what is invasive species as it impacts the specialty crop industry. So on a microclimate, as you know, John Day area is very small, so you could look at it with something smaller and industry involvement, and it would still be competitive, right? So it kind of just depends on how you put your project together, and that's why it's difficult to answer some of these questions until you actually see something in writing and be able to say, yeah, this is pretty competitive or not. So
Thank you.
I would say, just to kind of go on a broader scale, average funding of projects that come through here that move through, our average is about $72,000 that we fund, even with that $175,000 increase that we made last year for our threshold. So that's not an unusual number to see what I just told you. So.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, this is Elizabeth Schmidt. I'm the new executive director of the Sylvie Island Center.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Hey, I have a couple questions. Are there other ones in line ahead of me?
Nope.
Nope, go ahead.
Awesome, thanks. So we have an active specialty crop grant now from you all, and so I wanted to make sure, first of all, that we are eligible to apply if we have active funding.
So I'll answer that while before you move on to your next question. So those of you who do currently have active projects, you are eligible so long as the project substantially changes or increases in, so basically just substantially changes. So it needs to have enhanced the previous project. It needs to be something different and better, so to speak. So we can't be sustaining programs and basically keeping the same level of work. That's not what these funds are for. They need to enhance or go on to the next phase of your effort.
Perfect. Okay, I think that answers my second question. So just to recap, if we wanted to apply for a project that's kind of along the same lines as what we have now, we would need to significantly expand or build upon what we started with the first round of funding.
That's correct.
And otherwise, it just needs to be completely different.
That's right. Yeah. So a lot of times people will come back the next year for funding, and it's a completely different project, and that's totally fine. But if you have like 2015 funding, then we expect that like sometimes we'll see people come in 2017 funding. And it'll be a built upon project. It'll be the next phase of what they're doing to try to increase the capacity of what their work is. So.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Great. Thank you.
So, Elizabeth, we have a couple of questions specifically about what you have funding for right now. So, would you mind just sharing with the rest of the group a little bit about how you're using your specialty crop funding and then who you're partnering with?
Sure. And
I know you're pretty new to the organization, but if you so I don't mean to put you on the spot, but if you could maybe just give us an overview of that. There were a few questions that came in the chat box about the center.
Sure, yeah, I'll do my best. It's my third day, and I do not have the project in front of me, so I'll tell you what I know, and then I'll be happy to try to answer additional questions. What we're doing, the Sylvie Island Center, for those of you who aren't familiar, connects kids to food farming in the land. And we work in partnership with Metro Parks and also with Sylvie Island Organics, which is a farm which runs a CSA and allows us to use their garden for educational purposes. So what we're doing is bringing students out for field trips or summer camp to the farm and then allowing them to taste produce from the garden bed, and then sending them home with a bundle of veggies and a recipe book to their families so that they can share their experience at the farm with their families and help their families be kind of ambassadors for the specialty crops to help their families learn how to try something new in the kitchen and have that resource at hand when they get back from the farm. And then the final phase is a game, so they also get sent home with a game card that connects them to a grocery where they can go and look for that specialty crop. And if they complete their game card and submit it, then they're eligible to receive prizes. Our partners are Green Zebra Grocery and Organically Grown Company, which is a specialty crop or a vegetable distribution company in the Portland area. That's my summary. Can I provide additional information?
We can connect you with these two people that asked the question, if that's helpful.
That would be great. I'd be happy to help as much as I can.
Okay. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Sure, and I'm sorry I don't have the webinar up, so I can't see what those specific questions are in the chat box.
Well, you've addressed them.
They just wanted a broad overview of what your project is, so you did great.
Okay, great. Well, my email is elizabeth@SoviIslandCenter.org. If anybody would like to email me, I'll be happy to follow up.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
So, we have a half hour left allotted for the call. We can sort of shift into a discussion. If there are no other specific project ideas that people want to, whether they're sort of half thought out or half baked ideas that you want to share right now, we can continue to do that. Megan Kemple and I also talked about the idea of sort of helping to connect the dots with what's happening around the region or, the locations in which you all are in, and sort of maybe potentially coming up with some collaborative project ideas. So, so it's really up to you all how you'd like to use this remaining time.
This is Megan. Maybe it would work well if I shared the Oregon Farm to School and School Garden Network's project concept with the group so everyone knows what we're thinking about doing, and then others could express if they have interest in collaborating, but also we could have time for folks to share their project ideas with the group so that we might think about how to collaborate or coordinate those proposals. Just so everyone knows, I'm really interested in making sure that, as much as we can, that we're coordinated and that we're not either duplicating or submitting similar proposals, and that we're not competing with each other as much as possible.
Great. Well, why don't you go ahead and introduce your idea, Megan?
Okay. The Oregon Farm to School and School Garden Network is seriously considering and beginning to design a proposal, a project that would establish some regional farm to school and school garden hubs around the state. They would most likely have a joint focus on procurement, so increasing purchases of Oregon-grown specialty crops, as well as education, so educating kids about specialty crops through school gardens, farm field trips, etc. So getting more specialty crops into school meals, and then farm and garden-based education focused on fruits and veggies. And we are thinking of doing that, again, in a hub-type structure where there would be organizations that we would partner closely with around the state that would basically serve as resources for their regions. And they would help to connect those folks to provide networking opportunities, but also provide technical assistance and support. And we're also thinking that we'd like to have industry partners in each region, so probably farmers in each region who were kind of leaders in that region with farm to school efforts. So they could be farmers who'd done a lot with hosting farm field trips, who served as a resource for their peers. It could be that they were farmers who'd been really successful at selling to schools, who could be a resource for their peers. We've found that our stakeholders, both farmers and nutrition services staff, learn best from each other. We can talk at them, but they learn best, obviously, from their peers who are in the same field. So having farmers speaking to other farmers, we think, would be really valuable. We're also interested in possibly identifying, we're actually really interested in identifying specific crops in each region that we would really focus on. So we'd focus on promotion, education in each region. We might be partnering with commodity commissions to do that, either at a statewide level or in specific regions, so that we were helping to, that would be more probably related to the procurement piece, the purchasing piece. So we're really helping to figure out how to get certain crops into schools and address distribution barriers with certain crops in certain regions. For example, Eastern Oregon has some big distribution challenges related to specialty crops. And then the other piece, the final piece, is possibly having a focus on expanding opportunities for summer lunch, incorporating fruits and veggies into summer lunch programs, because we've had because it's such a wonderful opportunity in Oregon and not one that we've taken full advantage of. And I'd be very interested in partnering with any of you who think of yourselves kind of as regional resource people, especially, for example, Rogue Valley Farm to School or Willamette Farm Food Coalition, Growing Gardens, maybe Sauvie Island Center, and also having your help to identify producers in your regions who could be resource people for those hubs. So if you're interested, I'd also encourage you to think about, if you have a project concept, whether we could incorporate you into this project, and there would be a way for you to receive funding through the project so that you could advance work in your region. That's it. I'd love to hear. Mostly, I don't think we need to do networking on this call. If you all want to email me if you're interested, I've sent a couple messages to the group saying, let me know if you're interested in this, so you could just respond to that. Or my email address is megan@oregonfarmtoschool.org. But I'm definitely really interested, especially as kind of the network coordinator, really interested in hearing your project ideas and having you hear each other's, so that we can coordinate a little bit and just make sure to avoid overlap as much as possible.
Thanks, Megan. I just sent your contact information out on the chat box, so everybody could have that.
Great.
Can you tell whoever that person is to send the one that's up there? Put that in the email to us.
Sure. And then I have a message here from Jenny, and she says, I'm with Outgrowing Hunger, and we have an immigrant and refugee farmer program. We also have merged with Earth, Art, and Ag, which does school garden education, and we are actively trying to partner with Growing Gardens and Grow Portland to reach more kids in more schools. Our farm to school outreach exists, but it's definitely spotty, and I would love some help identifying partners. Okay, great.
Megan, feel free to contact me as a resource to help you get connected with others.
Yeah, and Jenny, we have a, here in the Portland metro region, there is a school garden hub, which I'm sure you're familiar with if you're working with growing gardens. And then we have, we have a food corps program here. So both Growing Gardens and the Native American Youth and Family Center both have food corps service members, which I'm sure you're aware of food corps. But essentially, it's a service-based organization that places service members in schools to provide school garden education, nutrition, and culinary education, and then also work with food service directors to help them with local procurement. So, anyway, and I'm familiar with those organizations. I've worked with Grow Portland and Outgrowing Hunger somewhat. So, and this is Amy. So if you have questions, I'd be happy to connect with you offline as well about just partnership here in the metro region. There's also a lot going on with Metro, with the Tri-County regional government that's working on getting basically they're helping to work on the outdoor school project, as well as they have I think they have like a children in nature project, and then there's also the Intertwine group, which sort of was born out of was incubated somewhat at Metro, that again is trying to help kids connect more with nature and with gardens. So yeah, I think we can, if you're interested, we can talk about what's happening here in the metro as well. And I'm just sending everybody my email address. Other ideas that people want to share with the group, or just some thoughts you've had about either the work you're doing, or even if you want to share any thoughts you've had about what Jenny and Megan have proposed right now?
Yeah, hi, this is Stella with Food Corps. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi. So I know, Amy, you are very familiar with Food Corps, so I won't go into that. But a piece of programming that we are seeing a lot of success with in schools is taste testing in school cafeterias as a way to test new menu options that include more local food and more veggies and fruit, and getting kids comfortable with trying new healthy foods. And the result is that we're seeing kids eating more fruits and veggies in the cafeteria, and we see food service procurement moving more locally. So with this grant opportunity, we are exploring how we can improve the infrastructure in our programming for delivering highly effective opportunities for taste testing in the cafeteria. So it's kind of just a brief outline of what our grant proposal might look like. And we are definitely interested in exploring opportunities for collaboration and partnership as it is appropriate.
So, Stella, are you talking about here in Oregon, or are you talking about the food corps programming, or helping to support food corps programming in Oregon? Because I'm imagining you're applying from national, correct?
Yeah, well, we are looking specifically at the Oregon program, and so it'd be specific to Oregon. And we're looking at some other state opportunities as well, but certainly we'd like to develop a program in Oregon and share whatever we develop through that with other states, but the focus would be Oregon in our proposal.
Okay, well, I think you and I should definitely check in about that and hear a little bit more about what your ideas are and how to, and Aaron too. Aaron Poplack's on the phone, but we should probably, you and I and Aaron should check in offline about that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, and then Jenny, you have a question about are you talking about whether or not we have food corps programming in PPS? Is that your question? Whether there's food corps in Portland Public Schools? Okay.
This is Megan. If people feel comfortable, I would love to hear all of the project ideas, so we also have an idea of how many, so we all know as well. You know, wow, I'm hearing a lot of projects that are going to be submitted. I'm hearing maybe one from the network, one from Food Corps. I know maybe one from the Bethel Farm. Amy, can you think of others that we've heard that people seemed like they had developed enough that they were going to be submitting?
I'm not sure if Kalapuya. I don't know if Casey's still on the call. Yeah, so probably Bethel. I haven't had anyone else. North Powder. I don't know if Aaron's on the call or not, but North Powder School Charter School has talked about a project idea that would sort of build off of their previous specialty crop block grant funding with they have a youth growers program. They also, given their location and relationship with a lot of the other very small rural districts in that area, have been working on a sort of a holding and distribution and storage kind of site for produce. And so because so many of those smaller schools don't move as much produce as often or as frequently, it's really challenging them for them to meet a lot of minimums of distributors. And so North Powder's come up with some creative ideas about how to sort of coordinate some of these produce purchases among different schools. So they have been talking about potentially submitting a specialty crop block grant around some of these supply chain issues that they are having and that other schools are having out there, so that, again, they would show collaboration between a number of rural school districts that are trying to address the same issue, which is getting more local produce into their school meals program. And then working with some of their area smaller producers or smaller specialty crop producers to help make that happen, as well as a regional produce distributor that now has frequent lines or frequent routes out to Idaho and goes by North Powder sort of on a weekly or biweekly basis. So that's sort of generally, I think, some of the things they're thinking about. Another component of their project that they have been considering is related to their on-site garden. They also have an interest in trying to source more produce from the garden, and they wanted to work with a few key industry partners in Eastern Oregon. I think possibly some orchard producers, sweet cherry, and I'm not sure. Maybe it was another diversified producer, but to do some sort of testing of different varieties of specialty crops that are known to grow well in Eastern Oregon, and using the garden as a sort of as a test plot for some of those, and then working with their young growers or their youth growers program to do that. So that's, and I don't think Aaron was able to make the call today, but that's an idea that they have.
Okay, I'm seeing Aaron on. I don't know if he is actually, but
I'm sorry, Aaron Thompson from North Powder, not Aaron Pop.
Right. Nope, she's not on. Okay. There's also a project. OSU Extension is thinking about a project. OSU Extension in the Gorge region, in actually Morrow and Umatilla County area, is thinking of a coordinated proposal that has some farm to school components to it. And unfortunately, I can't speak well to the details of it, but they're pretty seriously considering submitting something.
This is Elizabeth again. I am really interested in the next gen farmer idea, but I really don't have it fleshed out yet. But I guess I have a question, because I'm also very excited about Megan's idea and Jenny's idea and So the Island Center has a focus on improving diversity, equity, and inclusion. So is there any reason other than time constraints why we cannot or should not apply in partnership for multiple grants? Is there any prohibition against that?
You're saying your organization applying for?
If I wanted to follow with Megan and Jenny and offer to partner on those grants, is that a problem?
So is there another question?
Well, just the expanded part, if I also wanted to, put in a proposal on behalf of the Sylvia Island Center separately, possibly in collaboration with others. I know you don't want to have your interest split too much or appear that you have no focus, but at the same time, there are so many great ideas out there and not all of them can be funded. So on the other hand, I feel like the more we try to participate in various collaborative proposals, the more likely we are to get funded for one of them. Does that make sense?
Right. So there's a couple different things that I'm actually hearing with this thought process that you're saying. So first of all, as a single entity that applies for funding and partners with another, such as Megan's project idea, as a partnering entity, you can partner with anybody that you want to that has the same missions, goals, objectives that your organization has. And that's okay to do because it shows that everybody is cooperatively involved in efforts. As a single entity that applies for multiple projects, let's say Megan applies for 3 projects, and we would have to say, and it's been done before, where the advisory committee says, we like both these projects. The director would then say, which project's the highest priority for your organization? And so you'd have to pick one. Generally speaking, only one project moves forward into the state plan. So there's that thought process. The other one is sometimes we see projects like Megan come forward and there's subcontracting done in it where maybe your organization would receive $1,000 to help ensure that your portion of the project becomes successful. So there's contractual obligations within it, and that's okay as well. So there's a couple different scenarios that I just gave you as to how things work. But as partnering entities, we see partnerships all around the state where support letters come in, or, people are producers, obviously, partner with all sorts of organizations, nonprofit organizations say, I'm in support of this and here's why. So that happens all the time. And then same with contractual obligations, because some contractual entities are relied upon or are able to obligate time in different ways towards projects. So just kind of depends on how the project's put together. Does that make sense?
So to recap, I as a lead organization should not apply for more than one proposal, which makes sense to me. But if I want to apply as a lead organization for one proposal, but then also apply as a partner for Megan's project or Jenny's project, where they would be the lead, that shouldn't necessarily cause a conflict.
Right. And again, I do want to reiterate that some organizations do apply for more than one project, however, would be asked, if those projects rank high enough to move forward, would be asked to prioritize which one for the industry is the most important one. We've had Raspberry Blackberry Commission, Strawberry Commission, Potato Commission move both projects above the scoring line to the director, and the director either cuts it themselves or asks the industry to say which one's your highest priority and make that decision. So that has happened. So I'm not saying don't apply for 2 projects by any means. I'm saying this across the board to all of you, not just specifically to this situation. But I do want to make it clear that you're okay to, if you have 2 project ideas, it's okay to apply for both of them.
Okay.
So I'm making that as a broad statement because we're recording this and it's going to go online. It's okay to apply for 2 different types of projects.
Great. Thank you.
Yes.
Hello, this is Casey. Can you all hear me?
Yes, Casey.
Okay, so I am the Bethel Farm Manager down here in Eugene, and what we are thinking about doing is another high tunnel on our farm to increase our produce into the school cafeterias, and also to build a GAP-approved wash station. And I'm wondering if you could speak to, how that process might go as far as, do we meet the requirements by wanting to do a high tunnel on our district farm where the food is going to go directly into the school cafeterias and not necessarily working with another commercial farmer, but we have our own farm here at the school.
So thank you, that's a good question. So where high tunnels fall into place is where they're considered a special use equipment. Where they become eligible is when they fit within a specific type of project. If it's for the direct benefit of growing produce for a school and not necessarily for a specific outcome, that's where it starts to kind of get questionable. So it has to be for helping students to learn some sort of aspect about like some sort of training opportunity. Maybe you're bringing students in and you're teaching them, or you're bringing local producers in and they're helping to teach the students about seasonality, or you're integrating it into some sort of training and programming. But it's not just specifically to create more food just for the schooling, if that makes sense. So it needs to be integrated into a full project programming, trainings and workshops, or other types of things like that. So it kind of depends on how you integrate it into the actual project development.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Kind of challenging because we definitely want to see those put up and used. But it's also kind of a niche thing it came to us as a surprise last year that we were able to start using them. It was always
right. We work with our high school classes every week for several hours out on the farm where they do sustainable ag class. We're also doing field trips that will be having sessions in the high tunnel. So I think that actually, is something we already are doing, is making it educational opportunity and having farm interns researching what kind of crops we could grow in the high tunnel that would be something that we can't normally grow here in this climate, and things like that. So that's very helpful. And I think I'd like to work with Megan to see if our needs might dovetail with what she's wanting to do.
Yeah, it sounds like there's potential there then. So yeah, let's continue. I know we've been talking already offline, so I think let's continue to do that as you shape your project.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have one more here from, one more project idea here from Denise. She says, I have a project idea that would most likely fit well with Megan's proposed idea, as we've recently formed a regional garden educator network, and we're looking to see how we can expand our work so that every school has access to a school garden. I wasn't necessarily planning on applying to this grant, wanted to learn more. I will connect with Megan offline after the webinar. Thanks for all the information. And it sounds like that's in Central Oregon. Okay, great. Denise, you and Megan, hopefully you guys can connect about that. I wanted to share a project idea that we have, or that we're sort of thinking through here within the farm to school area at ODA. So we are working on a project proposal with the Food Innovation Center with the Oregon State University food product development side. of our shop here, and it's essentially to build off of some of the specialty crop up dinners that we've held last year around the state, where the dinners were designed to sort of feature either a local chef collaboration with specialty crop producers from that region, bring people together to try new specialty crops in sort of a series styled dinner for an evening. And so we're doing that we have funding to continue to do that this year. And then beyond that, we were actually thinking that we wanted to sort of start working more deliberately with schools and school communities on these crop up dinner events. And so one of the project ideas we're working on internally with the Food Innovation Center is sort of taking a look at some of the gaps in the next generation of both culinary arts professionals here in Oregon as well as youth growers or young growers. And so what we're sort of thinking about is potentially a series of events that would, or a potentially like a cohort of culinary arts kids that are in culinary arts programs in Oregon in each region, and linking them up with some of the youth grow or sort of school farms. So organizations like Schoolyard Farm, I think Courtney's on the call, possibly Super Fresh, which is here in the Portland Metro. Casey, this was something I was going to talk to you about as well. But the idea is that a lot of times there aren't a lot of programs for these younger kids or high school kids that potentially are interested in becoming fruit and vegetable growers. They may, FFA sometimes is limited in that sense at times. And so we're really looking at an opportunity to sort of link both our culinary arts students with maybe a few students from some of these youth farms, and doing a collaborative event together in communities across the state that would sort of culminate in a dinner or something where those students would work together and plan a dinner, maybe with some mentorship with a local culinary institute, or maybe even a chef from a local restaurant. And so anyway, it's sort of a project idea that Erin Poplack here, and then Sarah Masoni and Jason Ball and I are working at over with the Food Innovation Center. So those of you on the call that manage youth farms or work with youth farms, I'm actually going to be sending out a note to all of you today with sort of just some ideas that we've been talking about related to that.
Sounds like that might fit with Courtney. Courtney just posted a chat comment, and maybe also with the Bethel Farm.
Yep. Yeah, I've got Casey. I've got you and Courtney on this email I'm sending out later today. Courtney has a note here. I'm with Schoolyard Farms in the Portland metro area, and we're thinking about expanding our high school farm job training program. If any other organizations in the area with similar programs are interested in exploring how to partner, I would love to connect. And she's included her email there, Courtney at schoolyardfarms.org. Okay. Any other project ideas anybody wanted to share? We're just over time, and I want to be respectful of everybody's day. All right. Okay. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And it seems like there's quite a few connections that were made today on the call. And if you have any questions, I think there's a lot of resources. Both Megan is a resource for many of you. I'm also happy to be a resource as you're thinking through some of your project ideas. So please don't hesitate to reach out to either one of us or Shannon if you have any questions about the grant application itself. And thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you. That was super valuable. Thanks so much for doing that.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.